Good morning, everyone. It's Lindsay Baker with the Action Hour every Saturday at 10. And today my special guest is Kyle Luzynski, who is the executive director of Project Animal Freedom, an organization that has been around for about 2.5 years, that has 20 team members and so many, quote, so many applications that Kyle's having trouble managing them, but we want more. And you are here today to talk about the first annual Vegan Climate Summit. Before we get into that, I want to show a video from Supreme Master that explains exactly why this Vegan Climate Summit is needed. Here we go, folks.
Researchers from the United States-based Carnegie Mellon and Stanford universities found that intensive livestock and fish production in the U.S. cost the highest in health and environmental damages when compared to their input to the economy. The scientists estimated that the gross external damage, or GED, of animal livestock farms is twice as much as what the farms input economically. Gross external damage is measured by the premature human deaths arising from air pollution. In poultry farming, the gross external damage ranges from 3 to 7 times more than the economic input, as poultry litter emits massive amounts of fine particulate matter, including PM 2.5. Currently, PM 2.5 causes 90% of the 100,000 yearly premature deaths from air pollution in the U.S. Be veg, go green, to save the human race.
Wow. So you are organizing the first ever Vegan Climate Summit. And that is so exciting. Tell us, Kyle, what made you decide that this was the time, this is the year? By the way, folks, this is on April 22nd, and it is virtual. So every single one of you that see this video, because we've been sharing this out like crazy, and all of my wonderful viewers, you are all invited. April 22nd, 5 to 7 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time. And so please go sign up and participate. Kyle, tell us about why you got started with this project.
Absolutely. I believe we can trace the story all the way back to when I was just 12 years old and first went vegan. I came home one day after being ridiculed in gym class and decided to watch some lighthearted videos on YouTube to cheer myself up. Instead, I found an undercover video of factory farms and slaughterhouses, and once I saw what happened to animals, I could never eat them. But my first attempt at activism as a 12-year-old at my first Thanksgiving as a vegan was snubbed. I printed out 2 little pictures of turkeys in a slaughterhouse and then turkeys in a factory farm, and I put them in this centerpiece, which happened to have a little slit in the middle where you could insert a card. For most people, that would be a recipe. For me, it would be murdered animals. I was firmly rebuked by my family members, including my own parents, and I went silent about veganism for another 6 years until I turned 18. When I was 18, I took my first few classes in philosophy, and that's how I discovered my passion not only for philosophy, but more specifically for business ethics, animal ethics, and environmental ethics. I was shortly thereafter invited to give a presentation at the Ethical Society of St. Louis on the ethics of veganism as part of the Skepticamp organized by the St. Louis Skeptical Society. And in order to prepare myself for that opportunity, I read dozens of books. And it was only then that I realized how grave the problem was that I decided.
Name some of the books you read, Kyle, so people know maybe they want to read them as well.
Yes, absolutely. Meatonomics, Why We Love Dogs, Eat Pigs, and Wear Cows. The Case for Animal Rights by Tom Reagan, Animal Liberation by Peter Singer, the Defending Animal Rights also by Tom Reagan, and Old MacDonald's Factory Farm, which was a book that left me in tears, Meat Market by Eric Marcus, and quite a few others. By reading all those books, which I actually put on display, I had a sheet on top of this like 3 foot tall stack of books, and I showed everyone the evidence is overwhelming. Factory farming, animal agriculture is bad. Factory farming is very, very bad. That was my literal thesis.
In your class, and how did they react to that, Kyle?
Oh, some people were shocked because a substantial portion of my presentation was showing people the inside of these netherworlds of suffering and cruelty and violence and death inside factory farms and slaughterhouses. And in fact, a memo was released a day or two after the event, congratulating and thanking everyone who attended and who spoke. It was accompanied by 2 or 3 things they would do differently. And one of those things was never invite me back to speak because she apologized that some people were disturbed by the disturbing things they support.
Yeah, well, isn't that the truth and always the case?
Yeah.
Shoot the messenger.
Yes, shoot the messenger. And I believe that the truth can be painful, but it is ultimately liberating, and that the truth matters more than our aversion to it, because only when we are aware of the truth can we make proper decisions. I
absolutely agree with you. And so let's fast forward a little bit to when you decided to start. You are the executive director. Are you the founder as well?
Yes, I am the founder.
Freedom, right. So here's the logo. And we are going to take you to the site and look at a couple different things there. But right now, just wanted to show you a great logo. Who did that for you? Because I'm a graphic designer, and it's one of the most outstanding I've seen.
And I can tell you why. Because I was obsessive about it.
Oh, you did it yourself? It's lovely. It's wonderful.
Yes, it is. I use a service called Logo Joy, which is since rebranded, I think, as Looka, and they offer a free logo generating tool that I used, and I looked at hundreds of different symbols. I decided on that particular one, and I looked at over 3,000 fonts and narrowed it down to about 300, then narrowed it down to 30, then to 3, then to 1.
I love your energy. Your energy is amazing. It's a breath of fresh air. Your positivity, you just radiate. And I just want to say to you, if you're not out on social media, putting yourself out there with your message, you have to get out, because people can't help but listen to you, because you just have the most honest, sincere energy coming out of you, which is obvious that you are so much wanting to help the animals. And I love it. So tell us more about your organization. Tell us about Project Animal Freedom. I love the logo, and I am definitely going to get some gear, which we will look at in a little bit, but let's hear more about the organization.
Absolutely. Jumping back to the story with which we began, at the age of 19, when I finally gave that speech, I started looking for opportunities to get involved in animal rights activism, because I had found the passion to guide a forever purpose-driven life. And I found this little organization called START, St. Louis Animal Rights Team, and they had even helped promote my speech to their supporters on their email list. And one of the members of their network, Mac A.R. Freeman, actually joined me for my presentation. And that's a funny story in and of itself, because the individual who spoke right after me happened to be the leader of a prominent climate advocacy group here in St. Louis, and he had ignored all my messages on Meetup and Facebook about, are you aware of just how devastating animal agriculture is. And I wasn't approaching it in a condescending fashion. I was fascinated and profoundly disturbed because I had just discovered this information and I felt the need to share it and to work with others who want to take action to address these issues. This individual suppressed the truth, refused to engage, and to this day has done nothing to address the issues facing animals in our environment at large as related to animal agriculture. It's a very sad occurrence, and that's in turn what motivated the Vegan Climate Summit, which is one of our latest projects here at Project Animal Freedom.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. We want to focus on that. We want to talk about that. Let me just bring that site up again. And we want to make sure people talk about this as well and help us to get the word out there, because it's coming up, right? It's coming up real soon.
Oh yes, it's coming up next Thursday. And the good news is we have all our speaker roles filled with one exception. We're still looking for one or two more panelists. And if we can't find one, I will be a panelist. Why not?
Sure. I think that would be a good idea. Tell the folks, some of the people that are going to be there. And here you can see, if you just go to projectanimalfreedom.org, you'll see, if you just go to the main page, let me just go there, you darling, and then you see here, Gateway to Compassion, boom, there, oh, I did that again. Vegan Climate Summit, the other one we want you to go to too, but this one's coming up real soon. And then you just go to the bottom of the page. There's Dr. Rao. We love you, Dr. Rao. The schedule, is the schedule made out for us to, is it up to date?
It is up to date. We are still waiting on a bio from our keynote speaker, and we have yet to announce our panelists, but we do know what they'll be discussing.
Yeah.
They'll be discussing how to build an unstoppable environmentalist vegan movement, how to collaborate effectively with non-vegan environmentalists and other environmental advocacy organizations that in many cases have yet to embrace the call to complete and total animal liberation.
I think I said did I say that? Oh, this is Central Time. So how long is the conference?
The conference will last a total of 3 hours. And if there's anyone who wants to stick around after those 3 hours, I will stay until I fall asleep.
You'll stay till you pass out and talk.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So let's do this. Let's say exactly, I'm still a little confused. It starts at 5 and it ends at 8, and that's Pacific time?
Yes, it would start at 5 and end at 8 Pacific time.
Yeah, because we want to make sure people see that the times here are Central Time, because, of course, you're in the Midwest. So we do want to point that out so people know, the people on the West Coast know we're stating Pacific time. So that sounds real. I'm going to be there for sure. I want to see, I want to participate in this first event. So that's going to be great. And we also wanted to talk again about why all of this is so important. We know that a lot of our audience are aware, because we have wonderful viewers that come on every single week and listen to our show, and I'm so grateful for that. But we're hoping, and we know, luckily, that this goes out to a large audience. So we want to make sure that we give the full message. Oh, look at this. One more thing right here. It's on Earth Day. So this event is on Earth Day. Yeah, so that's amazing. And I know that wasn't an accident. But back to what I was saying, we want to give the full message. So I took the liberty, and we're going to go back and look at some of your slides as well, of bringing the Seaspiracy movie to check out as well. So let me just bring that one up.
Is Ali. I've been fascinated with the ocean for as long as I can remember. But this romantic vision that I always had of the ocean completely changed. I was forced to confront a side of the story I never knew, a story of just how huge our impact on the seas had become. Where are the big environment groups? They are deliberately not engaging with the most important.
As the most polluting industry.
Would you say there's any safety concerns for me making this film? แล้วคุณก็กลัวตายคุณก็กลับบ้านไปเถอะนะครับ The safety concerns are serious. Ignore them at your risk. If you're getting in the way of their business, you are risking your own life.
The slaughter of these dolphins is a reaction to the overfishing that's happening. เวลามีปัญหามาคือเราก็คือเขาแค่จำหน่ายว่าป่วย
We hear a lot about blood diamonds. This is blood shrimp.
We are at war with the oceans, and if we win this war, we're going to lose it all because mankind is not able to live on this planet with the Dead Sea.
I just don't see how you can enforce sustainable fishing laws with all these boats.
The same syndicates that are behind illegal fishing are the same criminal groups that are behind drug trafficking, human trafficking, and other crimes.
So there's no slavery going on. No. If you want to address climate change, the first thing you do is protect the ocean. And the solution to that is very simple. Leave it alone. Most of the
Wow. So I think that was a good thing to play because it helps to show the urgency. And I just do want to do one more thing and share the petition. There's a petition that is going around. I'm going to put the link in the comments so that you guys, when you see this video or those watching now, please go and click on this. Look how far we've come. And this movie is doing amazing. And, it's going to be a big help. So, Kyle, how do you feel when you watch that movie?
I feel utterly devastated because the scale of destruction is simply incomprehensible. One study estimated that we murder anywhere between 2.1 to 2.7 trillion sentient aquatic beings every single year. 2.1 to 2.7 trillion, an unfathomable number and an unfathomable amount of suffering. And it's so heartbreaking because I believe that we all have just one and only one infinitely precious life, and that it's a tragedy when just one life is snuffed out, let alone 2.7 trillion. Just to think if you were one of those fishes swimming around, minding your own business, only to be swooped up by these greedy human animals and to spend several hours suffocating to death, possibly be frozen to death in a ice tub or hacked apart while alive without anybody caring, without anybody intervening to help you. I can only imagine how miserable that would be. And it's particularly devastating because we could see the complete collapse of the marine ecosystem everywhere across the globe. Some studies, one study at least, indicated that we could see mostly fishless oceans by 2048. In just a few decades. And it gets even worse. Climate change also affects the health of the ocean. As the concentration of CO2 gases in the atmosphere increase, so too does the level of carbonic acid in the ocean, a process known as ocean acidification. And as the ocean becomes more acidic, coral reefs start dying, they can't properly calcify, and other calcifying creatures like clams and mollusks and certain fish as well, they can't form the calcified bodies that they need in order to survive, and as a result, they'll die out. We're already witnessing mass coral bleaching, and if I recall correctly, by 2100, about 99% of extant coral reefs will be extinct. Coral reef
Wow.
ecosystem will be the first ecosystem that humanity pushes to the brink of complete and total extinction, followed next by the Amazon rainforest. And what is the driving cause behind so much of this? Animal agriculture. We need to
Yes.
act, and we need to act now. The solution is so simple, and it can be implemented immediately.
Absolutely. And I think that message is getting out there, but we still need to keep going. We still need to keep pushing even more, make this get the news that this is an environmental issue. And the environmentalists need to get behind the vegans, or not get behind us, join us, I should say. Join us, because it's all one thing. And your health and medication. And we all know why all of this information has been suppressed. And I don't want to leave out the part, we're going to talk a lot more about your event, but you want this event to be an intersectional event, because everybody is affected. I was going to say affected. Everybody is affected. We are all one. We are all one. And I believe we do go on, but I do believe that we are from one. We are all one, from one source. And you hurt one side, you hurt yourself. You hurt everyone suffers. We see that over and over in the natural world. Do you agree?
Oh, absolutely. And some people are disproportionately affected by climate change, especially those who live in equatorial regions, as those will continue to desertify at an increasingly rapid rate. One of the main reasons the Amazon rainforest is going to turn into savanna if we don't take drastic, bold, immediate action now is simply because more and more water will evaporate and the ecosystem will become drier and drier, to the point where it's no longer a self-sustaining hydrological cycle that's rich in water to sustain these ecosystems that have evolved for millions of years to rely on that amount of water. It's absolutely devastating that we're going to witness this in our lifetimes. I think a quarter of the Amazon rainforest has already been cut down, and even if we were to halt all logging today, the Amazon is still on track to almost completely vanish over the next couple hundred years due to the effects of increasingly catastrophic climate change. And something else that we might want to note is that Western countries, the developed world, is especially guilty. We were the epicenter of the Industrial Revolution, and to this day, we are the wealthiest countries with the highest levels of consumption, extravagant, unnecessary consumption in many cases. The burden is being shifted from the Western world to the global South, which is disproportionately lower income. And that is a major issue of environmental justice and environmental racism that we need to address, particularly since the US is responsible, for example, of a quarter of all historical greenhouse gas emissions, yet doing almost nothing to curtail our emissions, end animal agriculture, convert to renewable energy, and do whatever it takes to prevent catastrophic climate change. There are going to be hundreds of millions of climate refugees within the next few decades alone. There will be wars over the remaining freshwater.
Water wars are coming.
Yeah.
Water wars are coming. And in the US right now, I've heard that some of the smaller farms in animal agricultural businesses, the smaller farmers cannot wait to get out of the business. They're dying to get out of the business. The water sources have been taken over for the most part and controlled by the larger corporate factory farms. And so these water wars are yet another level. We aren't even talking about the water wars yet. So as you say, one thing is going to envelop the other, but we do want to get people aware. And I love that on your website, you have this challenge that you give everyone to take to watch these 3 movies. And I would add to this one, Seaspiracy, which I do want to show one other thing. You can get If you go to @Seaspiracy on Facebook, you can learn a lot more information. I think the movie's free to watch, isn't it? As far as I know.
Yes, as long as you have Netflix. Is it available elsewhere
Yeah, it's
too?
available on Netflix, but you can see clips here and there. Do watch parties with your friends. Go watch with your buddies at their home. Everyone should see the movies, like you're saying. You know, we have to. I don't want to go so far to make our audience and our people that are just exploring this whole idea of veganism and learning about how tied into climate change it is and how people are not talking about that factor, which is the most important factor. We went when they were doing Fire Drill Fridays. Jane was doing Fire Drill Fridays. A group of vegan activists went to them and were shushed at first. Eventually, they were allowed to speak. I was not present, but they were allowed to speak, and as one of the key speakers, so forth. But at first, the connection is not made by these environmentalists. Did you want to comment on that?
Oh my, yes.
Without naming anyone in particular or calling out anyone. And we love Jane Fonda, and we're very grateful. And I hope those start up again. You know what I mean? Those were great. Yeah. Go ahead.
Absolutely. I believe that environmentalists are our closest and most natural allies. Yet there remains this major disconnect, this profound lack of awareness of the connection between animal agriculture and planetary destruction. Unfortunately, when you confront people with reality, including environmentalists, they are prone to discount that reality and continue behaving in a way that suggests denial of what's really happening. I have had the profound displeasure and the enormous pain of myself having been shut down at many crucial junctures when trying to reach out to environmentalists. And I gave one example without naming any names earlier in this interview. It was devastating to me. I was approaching him as a friend, and I thought he was my friend too. I thought we were allies. I thought we were into this together. Again, it was not this condescending, why aren't you taking action? It was this uplifting, what can we do to solve these problems together? But I was shut down. He saw my messages and he never once responded. And this went on for months before I gave up. I've also had other experiences. I actually interned with one of the major environmental advocacy organizations in the environmental movement. And I even went to DC to lobby various politicians to expand access to reproductive health care as a means of combating climate change, because the more human animals we have on Earth, the more resources are consumed, the more pollution is produced. Now, I have to qualify that and say that it's not just a human overpopulation problem, it's a human overconsumption problem. Having 7.8 billion people on this planet wouldn't be as detrimental if it weren't the case that billions of them, particularly 2 or so billion people in the Western world, were living these extravagant, meat-heavy, fossil fuel-heavy lifestyles. But
absolutely. And also not just I don't want to just call out any particular group, because if we think about where our clothes are made, I want to just do a real quick story here. I bought some stuff from a very good retailer in the pet industry, and my dog's he needs to go on a diet. He's on vegan food, and I'm trying to get him down, but he didn't fit in the largest size. So that we tried 2 different times to buy it. Both times it didn't work. They told me to keep the clothes. And I was like, well, why don't I have to send him back? Who's paying for that? Why can they allow me? They said, well, we don't tell you to keep everything, but they told me to keep food before. So I'm thinking, why is there this big profit margin? And particularly with these clothes they're getting overseas, paying nothing. And then they're so discarded that they told, I'll give them to a charity. But you get my point? Like somebody pays. And what's happening is people in the underdeveloped countries are the ones as you're saying so eloquently, we're passing the buck to them, polluting over there, but people don't realize that, and the government has been able to cover that up. But what happens is it's destroying the world for everyone. We just don't know about it.
Yeah, it's tucked away into the recesses of society, just like factory farms and slaughterhouses. I went on a plane ride, my first couple times on a plane ride, and I snagged the window seat. I love to look out the window. And as we were flying, I kept noticing these long, whitish metallic structures arranged in rows all across the country, everywhere. And I knew what those were. Those were factory farms. In almost every case, those long metallic buildings side by side and often with lagoons near farms, those were factory farms. And I continued looking out the window probably for 2 hours until the eye strain and the realization of just how much suffering there was in this world that I became nauseated and had to withdraw from the situation.
It's nauseating because of this everything, the smell, everything. I mean, how do people live there? What about the manure lagoons that exist? I mean, how do we get people, Kyle, to recognize what's happening? I mean, how do we, on a big scale, get people to change? What do you think?
That is
That's
the question,
right?
Yes.
$1 million question.
Yes, I believe there are two levels that we need to operate on. One social and one institutional, and there's a feedback loop between the two. The social level is where vegans focus most of their energy, trying to change public opinion and convince people one by one to go vegetarian or vegan. But after years of these methods, I've realized that that's simply not a quick enough method for bringing about animal liberation, a complete full-throttled animal rights revolution. I'll just give you a quick example. We had a committee meeting about a month ago where one of our members suggested that we organize at the neighborhood level and that we go door to door and knock on every single door in that neighborhood. And after that meeting, I thought to myself, there are 2.8 million people who live around St. Louis, 2.8 million people, and there are probably at least 1 million houses. You would have to knock on 1 million doors. How long would that take you if you knocked on 50 doors a day to accomplish? That would take you about 73 years. 73 years to just knock on the doors once.
You don't have that time.
Talking with people, and that doesn't include convincing them to go vegan. It would take 73 years. What we need to do, I think, beyond just education, is affect change at the institutional level. Because think of it this way. If you can convince one college cafeteria to go meatless just one day a week, you've changed the way that 20,000 students eat every week.
And not only the students, most of the times their families will follow suit. Most of the time, the family, they'll come home and they'll say, I'm not eating meat. And before you know it, the mom's looking up recipes and things snowball, and we can make changes. And of course, we've got some really interesting comments here. And I wanted to just go over a couple of them that people have been putting up. So let's just, going vegan is the best thing you can do for the environment, but there are also other ways to do as well. Yes, of course, there are other ways that you can do it. And conservation, cyclical environment where we have to get to the point with our business where all the resources they use are put back in and used again. But we can only work in one area. And the area that we're working in, or at least the two of us is the animal rights impact on the environment, to help tell people about that, because of the extreme cruelty. And if we are compassionate, to be compassionate people to each other, to me, it's a slippery slope. You know, you can do a little bit of harm here because you can hide yourself from it. And eventually you can do a lot of harm and come up with reasons why, you know, justify it. So there you go. What do you want to say about that? I know you can add some eloquent words to that, so go for it.
Absolutely. There are several reasons I'm drawn to animal rights activism. And one of those reasons is neglectedness, and one of the other reasons is efficacy. I believe that animal rights is the single greatest overlooked, unsung social justice cause of all time. And it includes all life, both non-human and human. It extends to include all life on Earth. But it's also the case that because it's so neglected, it's easy to make significant progress very cheaply. For example, one 7-cent leaflet is estimated to save 1 or 2 animals from a lifetime of suffering when distributed at college. Just 7 cents to save someone's life. But if you talk about, for example, the cost of rescuing and rehoming a dog, that can easily be $300. It's very important to address their situation as well, but it just so happens that farm animal advocacy is the most effective area to focus our efforts on, because we can see the greatest amount of progress for the least amount of cost. One way I like to frame the issue is that I'm lazy, but I want to make a difference. So what is the least amount of effort that I can do to make the greatest impact possible? And I have decided, based on everything I've learned, based on what I've discovered about myself and where my heart and passions lie, that the biggest difference I can make is operating primarily in the animal rights movement. It's extremely important, vital, that other people primarily work in other social justice movements. We can't ignore other social justice movements, but for me personally, based on everything I know, both about the issues and about myself, I feel that addressing factory farming and slaughterhouses in particular is where I personally can have the largest impact. And the issue gets even worse because about 96% of all the funds raised for animals are either going to animal shelters or to mixed use shelters, which could be any number of things that help a few number of animals for often very expensive prices. Whereas, what is it, 1.6%? No, it might be about 1% goes to the 9 billion animals in factory farms and slaughterhouses in this country.
Yeah,
1%
that's very
goes to help 9 billion. 35% or so goes to help companion animals, at most maybe like 200 million. So we have this gross funding disparity. And in fact, if you give me just one moment, I can pull this up. If you go to Project Animal Freedom, there is a very controversial blog. And I want to share a snippet of that before we conclude.
You know what, Kyle, if we haven't vetted it, I'm not sure I want to play it because we haven't talked about it, but you can just give us the general thing of what it says because we haven't really cleared it before we went. Go ahead.
Yes, absolutely. Returning to
Not sending names.
to that 7-cent leaflet example, for the average cost it takes to rehome, to rescue and rehome and rehabilitate a dog, a few $100s, compared to distributing leaflets, you could save 2,500 animals from a lifetime of suffering for the same cost it takes to save one dog from a lifetime of suffering. And I know
right, but we aren't saying that we shouldn't save dogs, and we aren't saying that we don't have to address that issue as well. Spay, neuter, we can't forget about the dogs. But what you're saying is that the problem is people aren't making the connection to the average person. A dog is not a pig is not on the same level as a dog. A pig you can eat. They're dumb animals. They don't feel pain. They don't know what's happening. A dog is a sweet, wonderful companion that you love. So the issue, of course, is perception and changing people's perception. So, we want to kind of focus on that as, I think, the key way of, at least in my opinion, you know what I'm saying? And I know that a lot of people feel that, the money is going disproportionately to some of the bigger organizations. And my take on it, and what from the studies we've done and research, some big organizations are doing good, but a lot, like we saw in the movie Seaspiracy, with some environmental organizations, the majority not really addressing the problem. And that's rampant in all different areas. Would you agree?
Oh, absolutely. And that's something very important to clarify. I'm not suggesting we do nothing to help cats and dogs.
Right. And we
want
to make sure people know that.
that vegans in particular focus on farmed animals as much as they can, because we are the ones who naturally care the most about farmed animals. We're the ones who know the most about the grim reality facing these billions of animals, and we're the ones most likely to advocate for them. So in that position, that's why I personally feel I can make the biggest difference, because 99% of people care about cats, dogs, and horses, and rabbits. But what about all the
rabbits are treated fairly well, although they're eaten. Rabbits are eaten, so they're persecuted as well. And we want to say also that, or I know you have talked about this before, that I care, you care about everyone. Black Lives Matter is critically important. Number one important, because human beings, compassion for humans, compassion for animals, LGBTQ, everyone. To me, that's the vegan philosophy. Love everyone. Everyone deserves the right to a happy life. What is that in the Constitution? It says it right now. It's in our Constitution, right? We need a Constitution, and that's what NAR's all about, the Animal Bill of Rights. We have to pass that. And that's exactly what you've been addressing with the disproportionate amount of money that goes to save dogs and cats as opposed to farm animals. And people will say, what about, other disenfranchised groups, the elderly? There's so much to tackle. This is our area. We want you guys to get involved with us, and we'll help you, right? Don't you believe that it could be a big kind of circle of compassion where people are good at addressing certain parts of it and everybody is kind of coming together? Isn't that your dream for your summit, the vegan summit? We have to get back to the vegan summit.
Absolutely. And one quick comment is that perhaps it's speciesism that's motivating these critiques of animal rights activists, because we never go to someone who's helping the elderly and say, why aren't you helping the gay community? We never go to somebody feeding the poor and say, why aren't you attending a Black Lives Matter protest? All these issues matter, and it just so happens that some of us are most moved by animal rights, and it's absolutely critical that we stay there, because, again, we are the greatest unsung social justice cause of all history, and our voices, therefore, count for even more than they might otherwise in other movements where there is much stronger support, because we're still talking about a country that's at most at 6% vegan. You talk about BLM, and over 60% of Americans support BLM now, especially after the recent protests and the murder, the horrible murder of George Floyd.
And that has to be on the forefront, because not enough people are, we don't want to make comparisons. I don't agree with making comparisons. And like we said, what one feels, I'll just say what one feels in their heart, I believe they should follow as their cause and their journey. That's what I believe. And if everyone does that, this will be an amazing world with those feelings of compassion for everyone. And I know that you feel that way, because that is the vegan philosophy.
Absolutely. And getting back to our vegan climate summit and really everything we strive to do, We want to be intersectional because we need to end all oppression. All oppression is wrong, and all oppression is interrelated. And it's important that we speak up for a variety of social justice causes.
Absolutely.
In fact, that's one of the motivations behind our Vegan Climate Summit. It's not a candlelight vigil for a horse who drowned in a horse carriage, a carriage horse who drowned in the river, and it's not a save vigil at a slaughterhouse, but it's still helping all of animal kind. Environmentalism is important, so is LGBTQI plus justice, so is gender and reproductive justice, so is
They're
trans.
all important. I think you made that point that they're all important.
Yeah,
let's talk about the Vegan Climate Summit.
Yes, specifically about the Vegan Climate Summit. Finally, we have arrived.
Yes, but let's start with this little cartoon that you brought. I think it's great, and I don't want to forget it. Why don't you address this a little bit? Because I don't think people can read it, but you go ahead and talk about it. If you
Absolutely.
would.
I identify as a nerdy vegan, and I happen to enjoy this comic series called XKCD Comics. And one day I stumbled across this comic that talked about, of all places, St. Louis, and how climate in and around St. Louis has changed over the past 100 or so years. There's this graph where you can see the number of days below zero each year. And you start out with like 5 to 10 days in many years that are below zero, even back just in the 1980s, but you zoom to 2000 to 2010, and there was not a single day below zero on record, not a single day. There was a polar vortex actually twice in the past 2 or 3 years where there were several days below zero, but that itself is evidence of climate change because climate change, global warming, disturbed the environment enough that this freezing cold air came down. So that itself is also evidence of climate change, even though there were some days below freezing. But here in St. Louis, there have been the winters keep getting warmer and warmer. Even in my lifetime, I've seen a difference. I remember all those wonder-filled days when I was 4 or 5 or even 7 or 8 when we would have several inches of snow, and it would last, in some cases, for weeks. We got one snow in this past year that was substantial, more than just a small frosting. It was 3 inches. It lasted 2 days.
And you know what? The terrible thing, and I think the cartoon is illustrating, is that people get used to it because that's the last thing. And we have to move on because we only have a few more minutes. I want to just keep going, but it's amazing how people just, it's like the frog on the stove in the pan of water, and it just slightly gets hotter and hotter, and that's where we're at. So we want to get people to come to your event. That is the most important thing here. So let's just talk about that again, repeat the date, and please, everyone, share out this video. Excuse me, I'm getting a little hoarse. Share out this video. We want everybody to know about this, but go ahead, Kyle. Tell them when it is, a little bit more detail on it, if you would, before we run out of time.
Absolutely. Our Vegan Climate Summit is an effort to bring together some of the brightest minds who exist at the intersection of animal rights and environmental justice, because the two issues are heavily interrelated, and you can't solve one crisis without addressing the other. We have recruited a number of phenomenal speakers, including Dr. Salish Rao, who is the founder and executive director of Climate Healers, one of just 2 major organizations in the entire animal rights movement that explicitly targets the connection between animal agriculture and environmental devastation as their core mission. We are very grateful to have Dr. Rao with us. We also have Hope Boanek, who is the author of the incredibly eloquent book, The Ultimate Betrayal, Is There Happy Meat? Her first chapter in particular on the ethics of betrayal is one of the most novel analyses and one of the most viscerally compelling analyses ever produced in the animal rights canon for why we should embrace veganism, and we do have a blog post on that. So if you go to projectanimalfreedom.org, go to our blog section and look for The Ultimate Betrayal, you will find a wonderful condensation of her book. And yeah, there it is, Meet the Ultimate Betrayal. You're welcome to browse that. We are very fortunate to have Hope Boanek joining us. She's also heavily involved in United Poultry Concerns, which is a very admirable organization based out of California that advocates for all our feathered friends, be they turkey or chicken or other fowl. And we are also being joined by Lee Hall, who is a liberation activist, scholar, and a law scholar as well, legal scholar. She will be talking about the connection between planetary destruction and the destruction of animal kind, as they are, again, both heavily interconnected. We'll also be joined, very excitingly, by Ray. I just met him. I'm not going to butcher his last name.
Oh, I know who you mean. It starts with a K, Kowalczyk.
Oh, no, it's not Ray Kowalczyk. It's Ray Ippolito.
Okay, I'm sorry. I tried to help.
Ray Ippolito will be joining us as our keynote speaker, and he will be discussing not only the dire urgency of taking action on these pressing environmental issues, but he will also be talking about the connection between climate change and the emergence of pandemic diseases like COVID-19, because COVID-19 came from interference in the natural world. It came from eating bats or civets or some animal. Scientists strongly suspect that it was passed from an animal to a human. Exactly which animal, which species of animal, we do not yet know. But that's the case for so many of the horrible diseases that have emerged over the past 4 decades. Be it.
Excuse me, hold on for 1 second. I just want to click the last click here to show people the last step, and then we could get back to that. But if they do click on that, explain the price, because people like to know, how does this work?
Absolutely. We are an anti-classist organization, and we believe that everyone deserves to live a satisfying life, complete with rich experiences. In recognition of the fact that some people don't have the money to attend ticketed events, all events have a suggested donation. Why suggested? Because we still need money to do stuff, but we also need to make our events accessible to everyone. That matters a great deal to me as a broke college student, even though there are a lot of benefits to living with my parents. I still know what it's like to not have enough money to go to a lot of events, and it's just a huge disappointment. And I don't think anybody, especially my friends with disabilities who live on low-income budgets, I think they should have the same opportunities as someone with more money.
That's very true, and that's very kind of you to think about that and to make that consideration. I do applaud you for that. I had one more slide. You were talking about animalism. I only have a few more seconds, but this is really interesting. This was on your page, and of course, it gives the definitions. And animalism is a philosophical and ethical stance that emphasizes the value of sentient beings. Animalism is similar to humanism, except that it does not exclude non-human sentient animals simply because they don't belong to our species. Animalism promotes the consideration of interests of all animals, human and otherwise. I just threw that in there a little bit. But I think that's really an interesting subject, and I want to go to that site and learn more about it. I would love to have you on again, but we're down to like 6 minutes. So, and what would you like to say to kind of wrap things up? Is there anything I didn't show that you would have liked me to showcase here for you of your site or event, or anything you want to say?
You did an excellent job of interviewing me, and sorry for stumbling my words.
No, you were great.
I'm somewhat nervous, but I'm also very excited and so grateful for the opportunity. What do I have to say? Attend, attend, attend. Educate, educate, educate. Act, act, act. We need to educate ourselves to educate the world. And our Vegan Climate Summit is just one opportunity to do so about arguably the greatest existential crisis facing all animal kind, all life on Earth, climate change. Climate change has the potential to wipe out 50% of all species on Earth within the next few hundred years alone. And we already have entered the sixth mass extinction of life on Earth, and so much of it is connected to habitat destruction at the hands of animal agriculture and air pollution in the form of greenhouse gases from animal agriculture. So what you need to do is attend events like this, learn the facts so that then you can share that information with others and inspire them to take action by going vegan, inspiring other people to go vegan, and if not go vegan, reduce their animal product consumption as much as possible. That is the quickest, easiest fix or remedy or bandage for many of the greatest environmental threats facing animal kind: habitat destruction, desertification, water pollution, water depletion, air pollution, land degradation, ocean dead zones, coral reef bleaching. Everything can be tied to animal agriculture. And what you need to do is educate yourself so you can educate others. And you also need to know this information for another reason. So you're inspired, if not compelled, to take action. Ignorance is bliss, but ignorance can be deadly. I know many people who don't want to know the truth. How many people have you spoken with about animal rights who just don't want to hear about what factory farms and slaughterhouses are like for animals? They shut down and they deprive themselves of the opportunity to make a meaningful difference. And as I've said in the past, ignorance, willful ignorance, is a tool of oppression. It can be the greatest tool of oppression. Choosing not to know what you ought to know, choosing not to discover that, not to rather recover that conscience inside you and take action based on what that conscience is telling you to do. To shut yourself off in this manner is just a travesty. And I know it's exceptionally difficult to contemplate just how grim the future can be, but it's also deeply empowering because once we know the extent of the problem, we'll not only be motivated to solve it, but we'll also know what needs to be done, what solutions exist to those problems. That is the advantage of having knowledge, and that's why I believe that knowledge can be painful, but it is ultimately liberating.
So come to the virtual event, to answer your question, Carol, on April 22nd. Pacific time is 5 o'clock. It starts. And Kyle and all these wonderful speakers will be there. Kyle, thank you for being on today. It was very nice to have you on, and I'd love to do a follow-up with you. You also have a vegan festival coming up in 2022, right?
Oh, yes.
So we'll have you back to talk about that, but we'll remind everyone, please share this video out so that enough people can see it. And we got a big turnout. The tickets are affordable. Whatever you can afford is the ticket, which is awesome. So there's a lot to learn there. And I was going through all of the t-shirts that you saw there. Those are amazing t-shirts. And I'm saying that with a professional eye because I was in the business. I'm going to go look at those t-shirts and probably pick a couple things out. But folks, go check out the website, projectanimalfreedom.org shop. And that's another way to support and help fund great work you guys are doing, and I know you're just getting started. So thank you so much for being on today, Kyle.
Thank you so much, Lindsay, for having us. I was actually tearing up before we went live because this wasn't supposed to happen. We were never supposed to make it this far. Thank you so much for covering our story. Thank you so much for covering our event. You are helping us change the world, as
thank
for you and all your other endeavors as well.
Oh, thank you so much. It's my pleasure, our pleasure, Jane Unchained, and we'll continue to have you on and support you because we think you're doing amazing work. So we'll see you next time, and we'll see you at the event. Virtual, everyone. You all can be there. See you there. Bye.